On ordinary nights, this cat curls quietly by the window. But when the full moon rises, something inside him wakes with terrifying force. At first, the house only hears scratching behind the storage door, soft and slow, like tiny claws, testing whether an old nightmare remembers him. His owner freezes in the hallway because the shy little pet who fears falling spoons now stands rigid, staring past him into darkness.
Hiss!
The moonlight touches his eyes, his pupils flood open, his breathing shortens, and the silence around him suddenly seems packed with invisible threats. By day, he is almost painfully gentle, always folded into himself, as if even comfort must be approached slowly before the world can hurt him. He startles at chair legs, passing shadows, distant engines, and his own reflection, which makes people laugh until they notice how hard he trembles. Nothing about him looks wild in sunlight, because sunlight lets him stay small, hidden, and harmless inside the routine that keeps his nerves quiet. He eats softly, walks lightly, and sleeps with his body tucked tight, like every inch he exposes could invite danger back into reach. Then the full moon climbs, and the change begins so subtly that anyone watching might mistake terror for excitement during the first minutes. His ears rise high, his whiskers stiffen, his chest pumps faster, and he starts tracking sounds nobody else in the room can hear. He turns toward the yard, then the roof, then the empty corner, reacting as though voices are leaking through walls the humans trust.
Come on.
The owner calls his name
Why
once,
aren't you looking at
twice,
me?
3 times.
Please, turn around!
But the cat does not answer because
What's
he is no
wrong?
longer standing inside tonight. What looks like madness is actually a body remembering before the mind can explain. And memory always arrives faster than safety in traumatized animals. He slams into the mirror, not to attack his own image, but because panic convinces him another hunted creature is trapped there. He growls at empty air, because empty air is where danger lives once fear has taught the brain to fill silence with predators. He tears the wall with frantic claws, not out of rage, but from the desperate need to break through a place his memory cannot escape.
Why can't you see it's not there?
And when he runs after things nobody sees, he is not chasing ghosts for sport. He is fleeing shapes that once chased him. That is why the most frightening part is never anger in his eyes, but the raw, ice-shattered terror of something reliving its ending. People whisper possession, curse, beast, or omen, because horror feels easier to name than a wounded mind breaking open under familiar light. But the moon is not creating a monster inside him. It is simply unlocking the door to the room where terror was buried alive. Somewhere in his past, another full moon watched him get abandoned, cornered, chased, or forced to witness love disappear in one brutal night. Maybe he cried outside a locked gate until dawn, learning that every silver shadow meant nobody was coming back for him there. Maybe boots pounded behind him through wet grass, and the bright, round moon burned above, while his heart discovered what helplessness truly meant. Maybe he saw the only warm hands he trusted fall still beneath that light, one in his small body never found language for it. Trauma rarely returns as a clear picture, especially in animals. So the past comes back as breath, pulse, sound, posture, and doom. That is why the moon matters, because it matches the old conditions closely enough for his nervous system to mistake memory for the present.
Hisses softly.
The scratch outside, the whisper overhead, the strange call in darkness. Each one may be ordinary, but his body hears disaster assembling. He is not seeing the room as it is. He is seeing the room through an old emergency that never really ended. And because cats survive by reading danger fast, his senses do not wait for proof once survival memory decides the threat is real. So every shadow becomes movement, every draft becomes footsteps, every distant scrape becomes the same approach that once shattered his safest world. His owner spends years believing the cat is merely fragile, never realizing fragility is often what trauma looks like when daylight keeps triggers asleep. The daytime gentleness was never proof he had healed, only proof that his environment usually stayed quiet enough for his defenses to remain hidden. Then, one exact light returns, and all the careful calm inside him collapses like thin glass under the weight of remembered terror. The owner first responds with fear, because anyone would fear a pet screaming at darkness, as if something unseen were standing inches away. He shuts doors, raises his voice, reaches too quickly, and those reasonable human reactions only confirm the cat's belief that catastrophe has arrived. In panic, even love can feel dangerous, because frightened bodies cannot separate rescue from capture when both come with fast movement and looming hands. So the cat recoils from comfort, twists from touch, and crashes deeper into fear, while the owner mistakes rejection for sudden hatred. But hatred is not living there tonight. Only helplessness so extreme it wears claws, teeth, noise, and wild eyes to survive it all. The turning point comes when the owner finally sees fear instead of aggression, and stops asking what the cat might do to him. He starts asking the harder question, what happened to this small life before it came here? And why does moonlight reopen it? That question changes everything. Because once behavior is read as memory, punishment becomes cruelty, and patience becomes the only possible humane response. He dims the room, closes the curtains, lowers his breathing, and stays near without forcing closeness, offering only presence before any contact. Instead of grabbing the cat, he places a blanket nearby, because safety must be invited gently when the brain is drowning in alarm. Instead of shouting the name harder, he speaks softly enough for sound itself to stop feeling like another weapon entering the room. And slowly, through shattered breaths and jerking muscles, the cat begins noticing one fact the nightmare hates. This owner is still here. He still hears the imagined scratching, still sees moving dread in corners, but now another signal joins them. Steady human presence without harm. That does not erase the trauma, because trauma does not vanish in one tender night. But it can sometimes interrupt total collapse. For the first time, the full moon becomes more than a trigger. It also becomes the moment someone stays and witnesses his pain. That matters deeply, because trauma grows in abandonment. But healing begins when terror is met by something steady enough to outlast it. The cat may never love full moon nights, and some part of him may always brace when silver light spreads across the floor. But survival is not the same as possession, and a frightened animal is not turning evil just because pain becomes visible outside. What humans call craziness is often a nervous system fighting for life with broken information, ancient alarms, and no language for mercy. His frantic body is not choosing theater. It is obeying a buried command that once kept him alive through the worst night. See that light? The claw marks on the wall stop looking monstrous, and then start reading like evidence left by severe, invisible pain. Even the mirror changes meaning, because he was never attacking vanity there. He was colliding with a frightened memory wearing his outline. The owner begins preparing before moonrise now, not from superstition, but from understanding, making the house quieter before old terror wakes again. Curtains are drawn, sharp noises are avoided, hiding places are opened, and familiar scents are left where the cat can reach them. These small choices matter because trauma heals through repetition, and repetition teaches the body that this moon is not that moon again. Some nights are still terrible because recovery is not a straight path, and memory can surge harder after brief periods of calm. He may crouch under the bed shaking or pace the hallway listening, while the owner sits nearby guarding the present for him. But there is a profound difference now. He is no longer alone inside the flashback, and shared fear is lighter than solitary terror. That is why the story stops being about a cursed cat and starts becoming about what unhealed pain looks like in fur. The horror remains, but it changes shape, because viewers slowly realize the creature they feared is actually the victim of an older horror. And pity becomes unbearable once you understand he never chose any of this. He only kept surviving the only way he knew. Every full moon is simply the wound, reopening wide enough for outsiders to see what daylight usually keeps folded underneath his quiet manners. His screams sound unnatural because pain this deep always distorts the body, turning breath into cries that seem to belong elsewhere entirely. His His arched back is not a performance of evil, but a defensive shape built to survive when escape feels thinner than air. His blown pupils are not proof of possession, only the visible signature of a nervous system flooding the body for emergency again. And his silence afterward may be the saddest part. Because once the storm passes, he collapses like something emptied out from inside. He does not remember it in words, but his body remembers enough to leave him exhausted, ashamed, and strangely distant by dawn. The owner notices how he avoids eye contact the next morning, as if some part of him expects punishment for surviving badly. So instead of scolding the damage, the owner moves gently, offers breakfast, refreshes water, and lets forgiveness arrive before explanation ever could. That morning, kindness matters too, because recovery is not only surviving the trigger, it is also learning safety still exists afterward too. Over time, the cat begins borrowing calm from the human beside him because nervous systems can synchronize when trust is repeated enough. He lifts his head sooner, hides a little less deeply, and returns from the edge faster whenever moonlight starts filling the room. Those changes are quiet, almost invisible, but quiet changes are how healing usually looks when the wound lives deep below spoken language. The full moon never becomes beautiful to him, but it slowly becomes survivable. And that is a miracle small creatures understand well. Because healing is not forgetting the night that broke you. It is meeting that night again without losing yourself completely inside it. And love is not proven by stopping the terror instantly, but by staying close enough that the terror no longer owns everything. So the real transformation on full moon nights is not the cat becoming monstrous, but hidden grief finally taking a visible shape. What terrifies the house is simply pain crossing the boundary between inside and outside, where everyone can hear it clawing at walls tonight. What breaks the viewer is realizing the monster shape was never his true nature, only the silhouette that trauma forced upon him. By the end, fear and compassion sit in the same room together, because the cat remains frightening while also feeling heartbreakingly small. That tension is what makes the story linger, since the audience cannot unsee either the violence of the episode or the fragility underneath. They began by fearing a beast under moonlight, but they end by mourning a broken mind trapped inside a small beloved pet. And the final truth is cruelly simple. He was never becoming something inhuman. He was returning to the moment that broke him. The moon did not curse him, the past did. And every silver night merely gives that buried wound permission to breathe again. Once you see that, the scratches, screams, and terrible eyes stop reading like evil and start reading like pure, unbearable, remembered fear. And once you understand him, the full moon stops feeling like a supernatural threat and becomes a calendar marking hidden private suffering. So when he trembles beneath the round white sky, what you are really seeing is pain made visible and survival asking not to be feared.